There is a truth that will change the way you see your life, a truth so profound that when you grasp it, fear will lose its hold, doubt will crumble, and the weight of uncertainty will be lifted from your shoulders. That truth is this: God has already worked it out for you. Before you even knew there was a problem, before the challenge arose, before the storm came, the solution was already established. You are not waiting on God. He has already made a way. The question is, do you have the faith to walk in what He has already provided? Many people live in frustration because they think God is delaying their breakthrough. But what if I told you that the breakthrough has already been completed? What if I told you that you are praying for what has already been released, crying over what has already been settled, and worrying about what has already been resolved in the unseen realm? The problem is never with God's provision. The issue is with our perception. We pray as if we are trying to convince God to do something for us, when in reality, He is waiting for us to align with what He has already done. God does not operate in time the way we do. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, all at the same time. Before you were even born, He had already orchestrated your destiny, set in place the resources you would need, and arranged the doors that would open at the right moment. You are walking into a prepared place, not trying to create one. What looks like an obstacle to you is just a stepping stone in the plan He finished before the foundations of the earth. You must understand that nothing catches God by surprise. He is never in a panic, never overwhelmed, never confused about what to do next. He does not react to circumstances. He orchestrates them. Before the problem arose, the answer was already spoken. Before the enemy plotted, the victory was already secured. Your life is not a random sequence of events. It is a divine masterpiece unfolding according to the plan of the Master. The key is not in trying to figure everything out, but in trusting that He already has. Trust is the foundation of faith. When you trust that God has already worked it out, you stop living in fear of the unknown. You stop second-guessing whether you are on the right path. You stop hesitating to step into new opportunities because you recognize that every step is part of a greater journey that has already been prepared. The problem is not that God has not provided. It is that we often fail to see His provision. We look at what is missing instead of what is already in place. We focus on the lack instead of the sufficiency of God's hand at work in our lives. Think about Elijah when he was at the brook. The land was in famine, but God had already worked it out. Before Elijah could worry about where his next meal would come from, ravens were assigned to bring him food. When the brook dried up, God had already spoken to a widow to sustain him. Elijah did not have to figure out his own survival. He simply had to follow God's instructions. The same applies to you. The answers you are looking for are not in your ability to manipulate circumstances, but in your willingness to obey God's voice. When He tells you to move, move. When He tells you to wait. When He tells you to step out in faith, do not hesitate. The provision is connected to your obedience. Too many people are delaying what God has already completed because they refuse to move in faith. They want to see everything clearly before they take a step. Paul. But faith does not operate on clarity. It operates on trust. You do not need to see the whole picture. You just need to take the next step. When the Israelites marched around Jericho, they did not know exactly how the walls would fall. They only knew that God had already determined their victory. When they obeyed and moved in faith, what was already settled in heaven became manifested on earth. This is how you must live your life, not questioning whether God will come through, but walking in the confidence that He already has. Not worrying about how things will work out, but trusting that they already have. Not begging for a way to be made, but moving as if the way is already open. Because the truth is, it is. So as you step forward, do not carry the burden of uncertainty. Do not allow fear to cripple your progress. Do not let doubt rob you of what has already been secured. Lift your head, straighten your shoulders, and move boldly, because God has already worked it out for you. And when you believe that, you will see the evidence unfold before your very eyes. When you truly grasp that God has already worked it out, your entire perspective on life changes. You no longer pray from a place of desperation, but from a place of confidence. You no longer strive to make things happen in your own strength, but instead align yourself with what God has already set in motion. You begin to walk with an assurance that no matter what you face, no matter how impossible things seem, the outcome has already been decided in your favor. Sicker. One of the greatest strategies of the enemy is to make you think that you are still fighting for something that has already been won. He wants you to believe that your healing is far away when it has already been provided. He wants you to think that your breakthrough is uncertain when God has already made a way. He wants you to live in fear, worry, and doubt so that you never step into the victory that is already yours. But the moment you realize that you are not trying to win, you are enforcing a victory that has already been won, you begin to operate differently. David understood this principle when he faced Goliath. While everyone else saw a giant that could not be defeated, David saw an enemy that was already conquered. He did not step onto the battlefield hoping to win. He stepped in knowing that God had already given him the victory. That is why he could speak with such confidence, declaring that God would deliver the giant into his hands. He did not wait for proof before believing. He believed, and then the proof manifested. This is the kind of faith you must have, a faith that does not waver when circumstances seem contrary, a faith that does not shrink back in the face of opposition, a faith that moves boldly even when logic says it is impossible. Because when God has already worked it out, your job is not to make it happen. It is to step into what is already finished. Some of you are standing before closed doors, wondering when God will open them. But what if I told you the doors are not locked? What if I told you that your breakthrough is not waiting on God, but God is waiting on you to move? Some of you have been asking for confirmation, asking for a sign, waiting for everything to align perfectly before you take the next step. But faith does not wait for perfect conditions. Faith moves because it knows that God has already prepared the way. It is time to stop hesitating. No. It is time to stop doubting. It is time to stop living as if your future is uncertain. God has already settled it. He has already made the way. He has already provided the answer. Now it is your turn to believe, to trust, and to step forward in faith. And when you do, you will see what was already finished become your reality, because God has already worked it out for you. So now the question is not whether God will do it. The question is whether you will believe it. The victory is already won. The provision is already released. The door is already open. Your future is not something to fear. It is something to step into with confidence, knowing that God has already gone before you. The storms that rise against you are not signs of your defeat. They are simply reminders that you are walking in a plan that the enemy cannot stop. Do not let doubt rob you of what is already yours. Do not let fear keep you from stepping into the blessing that has been prepared for you. Do not waste another moment questioning whether God is able. He already has. Your healing is finished. Your breakthrough is secured. Your destiny is established. Now all that is left is for you to walk in it. So move forward boldly. Speak with confidence. Pray with expectation. Praise as if it is already done, because it is. When you live with this awareness, nothing can shake you. Nothing can intimidate you. Nothing can stop you. Because when God has already worked it out, all you have to do is walk in faith and watch his promises unfold in your life. Trust him, step forward, and see the manifestation of what was always meant to be. God has already worked it out for you.